Mark chapter 1 says this, "And immediately he left the synagogue and entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Now Simon's mother-in-law lay ill with a fever, and immediately they told him about her. And he came and took her by the hand, and he lifted her up, and the fever left her, and she began to serve them. That evening at sundown they brought to him all who were sick or oppressed by demons, and the whole city was gathered together at the door. And he healed many who were sick with various diseases, and cast out many demons. And he would not permit the demons to speak, because they knew him. And rising very early in the morning, while it was still dark, he departed and went out to a desolate place, and there he prayed. And Simon and those who were with him searched for him, and they found him and said to him, 'Everyone is looking for you.' And he said to them, 'Let us go on to the next towns, that I may preach there also, for that is why I came out.' And he went throughout all Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and casting out demons." So right after Jesus comes out of the synagogue and heals someone, he's going to Simon's house. And his mother-in-law, and Simon is also Peter, and his mother-in-law had a fever, and so Jesus took her by the hand. It says he lifted her up and the fever left her, and then she began to serve him. So something that we can draw from this principle in the Bible is that when you're healed by God, you then should respond by serving God. When God does something in your life, a lot of people, they just take that and they, don't do anything with it. But the reason that God does things in our lives is so that we have the empowerment to now serve him and give back to him. Imagine, if someone gave you all these great gifts, but you never gave anything back to them. You see, that would not be a good relationship. But Jesus came and he healed Simon's mother-in-law, and she responded by saying, I want to offer my gifts and resources to you, Lord, and I want to serve you. So if the Lord has healed you in your life, my question is, if he's healed your heart, if he's healed you from your sin, if he's forgiven you, what are you giving back to God? What are you doing in response? Then in the next passage, they're bringing all the people to Jesus. It says, at sundown, they brought all who were sick or oppressed, and the whole city was gathered there, and he healed them all. But he didn't permit the demons to speak, because they knew him. And then you see Jesus actually escapes from the scene, rises up early, and he begins to pray to the Father. And then he gets direction for where to go next in his ministry. And what we see here is the principle that Jesus needed to take time to be alone with the Father. He never let doing for God get in the place of being with God. And it's so important to realize, especially if you're someone who likes to serve the Lord and likes to follow him and do different things, it's so important to realize we need to practice spiritual disciplines to make sure that our faith is strong before we go out and pour out. The question is, are you being poured into? And Jesus was pouring out, he was healing. Another scripture says when Jesus heals, that power leaves his body. It takes something out of him. So Jesus goes away and he goes to the Father, and he depends on the Father for direction. And God, the Father, gives Jesus the direction, and Jesus comes back and he says, let's go to the next towns and preach, because that is why I was sent. And then he went out and throughout all Galilee, preached in their synagogues and casted out the demons. The question that we can ask based on this is, do you spend time to go with your Father? Do you spend time to pray? Do you spend time to meet with God in his word? Because that is what's the empowerment that you can have to serve the Lord, to do things for God. We need to first be with God. Reminds me of Mary and Martha, right? Martha was distracted by so much serving, but Mary was sitting at the Lord's feet and listening to his teaching. And Jesus said, Mary's chosen the better portion.